Hello, everybody. This is Kitchen Fire Podcasts, and I am your host, Tristan Hurst, and this is my co host.
Grayson Baylor.
And today we will be taking a look at pursuing happiness as seen in Professor Mark Perez's class, The Good Life, which is taught here at JWU, and be taking a look at the show The Bear through this lens. Take it away, Grayson.
So, pursuing happiness isn't exactly something that we're all unfamiliar with, so I don't really feel the need to explain what pursuing happiness is. If you need someone to explain it to you, you're probably not pursuing happiness enough, and you should work on that. But in the show, The Bear, everything they do is just to try and make their life better, to really achieve that level of happiness that they all want, to be successful, to be entrepreneurial, to just be better. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do, and it's something everyone should strive for. We've got a couple questions that we're going to go over and a couple concepts that we're going to talk about with pursuing happiness. And our first question for you, Tristan, will be how to explore the relationships between characters in The Bear. How do these friendships and connections contribute to the character's happiness? And how does the show convey the importance of positive relationships for overall well-being?
Ooh, that's kind of a rough one for the
Yeah.
Bear. There's not a lot of positive relationships in the show, but
Nobody's
I think
really
there
that
are.
nice.
I think there are a few. So one that I will say that was very wholesome up until the final episode, where there were incidents that did occur, was Carmi and Marcus. They had a very strong connection throughout the first season, from Marcus's passion for pastries, and I think that's a huge. That is really something really to look into. Carmi and Marcus have this connection, and you can see that Marcus is obtaining a lot of joy from this connection, and Carmi kind of is enjoying helping to instruct Marcus and kind of guide him along this path, like a mentor and a pupil. And it's you can see that it's positively affecting both of them as they're both growing from this relationship, and they're both obtaining some level of happiness from it and fulfillment. Another relationship that I think is a really good one to look at is between Carmi and Sid. While there is tension in that relationship, you can see that Sid goes from treating Carmi as a almost like
A
a
god.
god, yeah,
Yeah.
to more of a human, and you can see how Carmi becomes more and more comfortable with Sid as a sous chef and as a person and a friend, even during that time period where she starts to treat him more like a normal guy. And I think that is a great way of looking at it, and they become comfortable with each other and they confide in each other, and you can see them both kind of grow together to an extent, I would even say. And they just help each other, like mentally, I think, a lot. And I think that's very important for both of the characters. What do you think, Grayson?
Well, I think that what you said about her treating him like a god, I think that's a very, very good point to make, because everyone, of course, has heard, don't meet your heroes. And for Sid, she did exactly that. Her entire backstory is one of, well, not exactly positivity. And she goes from being poor and being from Chicago and really growing up around the beef. I mean, in the first episode, she says it is her dad's favorite restaurant. And being poor and being broke, something that all us college students can really, resonate with. Yeah.
She's in debt.
I say as I sit on a squeaky chair. We all understand what she's going through. And so she goes to culinary school, and she goes to the top culinary school. She works her ass off. She really makes it. She gets there. She gets to her goal. She is pursuing happiness like a hound on a hunt, and she is there. And she saves up her money, and she travels across did she travel across the country or across the globe, Tristan?
Can't remember off the top.
We'll just say across the country just for now.
Yeah,
we know she goes to New York, and she even says, when Carmen asks her, why here? Why do you want to stage here? Why do you want to work here? And she says, because of you. She traveled around the country. She went to New York. She traveled from Chicago to New York. By the way, for anyone looking it up, nearly an 18-hour drive, something I'm not ever going to do. She goes there. She
That's what
goes to. Yeah, that's what a plane is for. She drives it. At least that's what she said in this show. And she tries it out. She tries his food. And she gets something specifically made by him for her. And it completely expands her mind. She decides that she's going to follow this man to the ends of the earth. And she starts to treat him like a god. She's gotten to try all this supposedly fantastic food that all of her culinary peers were like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. We got to try this and try that. And finally she tries it. And the only one that really resonates with her, that really likes it, is the one that Carmen makes when he's at his, pinnacle and his peak in New York. And so when she hears that he's going to Chicago, and it's like 10 minutes from her dad, and it's her dad's favorite restaurant, she goes, she pursues it, she follows him, and never meet your heroes. And I think this is a perfect example of that, because she starts to realize he's not a god, he's not a demigod, he's not a king, he's just Carmen. He's just Carmen Brazato.
An incredibly flawed individual.
Yeah, a flawed individual haunted by illusionary bears and house fires. And though he's trying his best, and she starts to learn a little bit of the backstory. Personally for me, and I say this every episode, that I didn't like this character, and I do like Sydney, but I do believe that she's naive in the way that she just thinks that he's just going to be amazing in every way, shape, and form, and doesn't even possibly think that he is just a guy trying to find happiness. What do you think about that, Tristan?
I think so. I think a lot of that's very accurate. I think that Sid has these unrealistic views of Carmi, and it's always brought down. But I wouldn't say that her and Carmi's relationship is a testament to don't meet your heroes. In fact, I would say that's one of the best outcomes that can be hoped for, is where she accepts the fact that he's not a demigod and begins to build a relationship with the guy, and not the idea that he's represented or the fantasy that she had. So I think that's a really good thing, and I think that's a really powerful connection that they both eventually make. And
thinking about that, she starts to, and I did watch a little bit of season 2 just to start to get it. And I didn't want to bring this up during the podcast because I watched this was my first time watching the series, so I watched the first season. But during the first episode of season 2, you start to realize that she's no longer just looking up to him for direction. She's really taking into her role of a sous chef, and instead of just looking to follow his directions blindly, she starts to work to cover for his lacking, but also to make up for her own. And he does the same.
I would say that they go from sous chef and executive chef to partners.
Exactly.
At least in the actual business. Now, when it gets to the kitchen, Carmi is still the executive chef.
Yes.
But she takes the sous chef role, but they're both phenomenal in their roles. And when they're doing menus and everything, they are bouncing ideas off of each other.
I think that's a perfect way of putting it.
Yeah, so I think that's a great way. They develop a way of saying sorry in the kitchen to de-escalate, which is really awesome. Which is sign language, I believe, that they start using.
Yes, I did see that clip. I liked that.
Yeah, and so I think that's great. Now I want to move on to another question now, which is identify instances where characters in the bear face challenges and explore how overcoming these challenges contribute to their happiness, and how does the show portray resilience and perseverance as pathways to joy. What do you think about that, Grayson?
So you'll have to cut me off because I could talk about this specific question for hours. But firstly, the fire. It happens twice in the first season, both with his apartment fire and with the stovetop fire, where he tries to light his cigarette inside the restaurant using a stovetop burner, and it completely catches fire. And he takes a step back. Now, in my head, if I put myself in his shoes, and I would immediately think, oh my god, my face almost became jello on the floor. And that is something a little bit intimidating and a little scary, but he also has that natural human reaction where he realizes what's happened and he just stares into the fire. That praxic flame of realizing that he could have died just then, and that he's completely enveloped in how fragile he is, and it really pushes him to that breaking point because it's very close to the end of the first season, right before, well, the hellfire kicks off. Yeah. Yes, the donut and the Sydney incident, all that going on. It's something amazing, and seeing him recover from that, and seeing all these characters really come together at the very final scene where they've discovered the money inside the tomato cans, and Carmen has texted Sid and Marcus and truly apologized from the bottom of his heart in his own way. Of course, if you watch the show, you'll understand he didn't just say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, please come back." He texts Sydney saying, "Hey, I'm sorry. Also, your dish could use some acid." Which I think is hysterical, because that is a very realistic thing. Hell, I've done that at times where I've been rude to somebody. I'm sure I've done it to my brother 1,000 times, where I've apologized very just like haphazardly, followed up with, "By the way, just so you know," or something like that. And that really, being able to swallow that pill and just accept it and move on both sides, really is something to aspire towards. And, well, I mean, I'm sure everyone can reflect on that in their own lives.
I want to cut you off for a moment, and I want to talk about, I know I've harped on this character a lot in this series, but again, Marcus, and how they've, and resilience and perseverance, as well as Tina again, and how that both of them have to go through trial and error to improve their craft, but they both are becoming happier as they do so. And you can see as they improve, they're getting happier, and that they are using, and you can really see that this resilience and pushing through everything is really making them happy. And the perseverance of, like, I may not be the best right now, but I'm getting there, is huge to both of them.
Yeah. What do you think? Well, you can see it specifically with Tina and with, not so much with Marcus, but I actually did notice this. Whenever they sit down for family meal, and whenever Tina tries something, like especially Tina and Sydney's relationship is extremely strained throughout the entire series until they meet some semblance of balance. But Tina...
in the first season.
Oh, yeah, in the first season, of course. I'm just talking about the first season. But you see Tina, she never really smiles. Like, very, very rarely does she smile. And during family meal, when Carmen's, "Hey guys, come try this. Cousin, come try this. Tina, come try this." She's like, "Oh, okay, cool." She tries it, yum, and moves on. Doesn't crack a smile, nothing. Until she really starts to learn, and she really starts to appreciate the finer things in those little bits of time. You can see at the beginning, and I would applaud you. Go rewatch it. Watch Tina as in the first episode when she's trying things. She's like, "Wow, this is good," because a top tier French chef just made this for us. That's good. And then she goes to continue on, never smiles. And then as you see, she slowly starts to smile, even when Sydney gives her some tips on, well, I forget what she made. It was some soup or something like that, but Sydney tells her, she's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good. I actually really like it." And Tina just cracks a smile, just a little bit of a smile, just like that little bit. That just, it's so appreciative. It's such good acting.
She's gobsmacked at first by that too.
Yeah,
like she is utterly surprised, like that Sid had no notes and was just like, "It's good, chef," and then kept on going. And then Tina takes back her dish and she starts to smile, and you can kind of see that. And that's just such good physical acting, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't one of the questions that we had written down, but I want to ask you personally, what are your thoughts about flow state and how that pertains to the bear? Because I have seen, or at least with two specific characters, I've seen how flow state affects both of them,
Okay,
and I want to get your opinion, and I
I'm
want to
gonna
see if you have similar ideas to me.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about what we talked about before we started recording,
Oh yeah,
and that is
go
with Carmen, and he has these negative and these positive and negative flow states, and that is something that I really want to harp on because whenever I think of flow states, for me, talking about a flow state is something I do when I'm at jujitsu, when I'm in a kitchen, when I'm doing my work, when I'm recording a podcast. I'm in the zone, and I'm an actor, and I'm a fighter, and I'm a cook, and I'm a chef, and I'm whatever I need to be in this moment. And with Carmen, that is, of course, he is the best. He is the best of the best. He can handle anything. He is the chef. And when certain things happen, he has that positive flow state. He's kicking ass. There's certain scenes where you see him where he just really takes off. Someone falls behind. Boom, he's got you covered. Something falls on the floor, he'll catch it. Things like that. Particularly when like Richie accidentally, gets stabbed. You see that he starts to cover for it. But you also see those negative flow states where he just gets so engrossed in his own anger and his own resentment and his own hatred and rage towards others. For example, there's of course the incident with Sydney where he's using some expletives and telling her, get the heck off my line, of course saying it in a different way, but he's like, get out of here, get off this expo, you left, because she left the pre-order on, so they had 250 orders due in 15 minutes, kind of a rough scenario, but they handle it. Or another instance where he enters that negative flow state and just lets those negative thoughts sit and stew is when Marcus and the unfortunate donut incident. And this is very close to the other incident with Sydney where they use these, he gets just engrossed in his own rage and he can't break out of it. And Marcus finally wanting to show off his masterpiece, his, perfect jelly donut. It's like, chef, not taking into account anything in the room, which is something I've done multiple times in a kitchen. Just like, hey, I've done something cool. What the heck are you doing? Just completely losing it on Marcus. Yeah. And not even realizing that this is Marcus, a timid guy, wanting to show off and really show him, hey, I've got it. This is something that I want to show you. Something from me to you. And he's so wrapped up in his own resentment and rage towards the current situation that he doesn't realize it and throws the donut to the floor and screams at Marcus, and Marcus walks out. He throws all the donuts into the front of house and just leaves, and I think that's something.
I want to talk about flow state as it pertains to Marcus too. You see Marcus, in my opinion, enter this flow state constantly when he's learning and when he's like actively doing his pastry stuff. He starts to kind of just get in the zone at some points, and he tastes something and he notices that it's better, and you see that like just that utter
joy,
happiness, just pure joy across his face. And I think that's one of the most like biggest things I can point to when it's like you should try and live your life in flow states. You want moments like that with Marcus and him just tasting something and being like, I made this. Holy crap, I made this. Like,
well, I think with Marcus, he sometimes gets a little bit obsessive with it, which added to the donut incident where he should have been making something else. And I believe we talked about this on the last episode, where he really just got too wrapped up into it, and it ended up being detrimental to himself and to Carmen, which resulted in, well, a donut being on the floor. Rest in peace.
Now, are there moments in The Bear where characters find happiness in simple pleasures or express gratitude for the things around them? How does the show emphasize the importance of appreciating small moments for overall well-being? And I think I'm just going to kick it off right here.
Yeah,
I think a great moments in The Bear where it shows this and the small moments of appreciation is family meal.
Yes!
And whenever they're tasting things that they've made, you can see it on their face where they take a moment, they breathe, they enjoy the moment and then they move on, and they move on better for it. And I think that is such a good representation of that particular question.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm
Go ahead.
so glad you brought that up, because I love that. Is exact the moment you started reading that question. I love it. I knew you were gonna say it. That was something I was like, man, I hope he says this. I want to say it if he doesn't. It's just such a perfect. It's like the little save game area. It's just that little pocket of time where they stop everything, and a hush falls over the crowd, and a calmness comes down upon the actors, and just everything nice and comes together. And it's not in every episode, but it's just such a joy to see, because I feel like this is really where everything happens. And there's a couple scenes where, and I believe in the last episode they don't have a family meal, but they have something better, which is when they're all tearing the absolute hell out of those cans and trying to get the money. It's those little pieces that really add up. It's such a good moment.
It's really funny to me that first of all, that Carmi almost discovered the cans in episode 1, but then he got too prideful and then just put the cans back, and that was really funny to me. But furthermore, I think that it's really a great way to look at the bear through the lens of, again, The Good Wife in the Class, taught by Professor Mark Perez and at JWU. It's just such a good method, because you see them all taking steps, and I honestly think you can look at a lot of other different weeks that we visited throughout this class, and, like, for instance, total leadership, story, luck, habits, and grit, all emotional intelligence. I think all of these would relate to the bear. And I think that you can really just see how each of the characters are moving towards living a better life and living a good life and a more fulfilling and happy life through this. And yeah, I just think that it's a great lens in which to view the show. I think it's a phenomenal class. And yeah, what do you think, Grayson?
About the class or the show?
Just the way of looking at it, seeing them move to the good life through the show, and how they're moving to better themselves as the show goes on.
I think the bear is something that I can appreciate, and that I think no matter God, what's a good way of putting this? I think it's a show that you could show somebody from the 1900s, the 1950s, the 2000s, and the 2020s, and even into the future. I think no matter what time we're at, no matter how far humanity goes, no matter whether we're at the stars, we're making Dyson spheres, or we've uploaded ourselves into the cloud, I think a show like this is something that'll truly never lose its ground until we lose our humanity. It's just one of those things that as long as you are human, there's something you can understand. As frustrating as the show is, can be sometimes, and as much as joy and sorrow and anger and hatred and love and joy that the show can bring, it's just something where as long as you are human and the show is streamed in a language you understand, you will have something to appreciate. It's just one of those things. It's very much like a nice warm meal, or having a roof over your head and a nice warm blanket. It's just something that everyone can appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those shows that's really never going. It's something truly special, and I think that they've achieved something truly special with this show in showing something truly human and truly real, even though it's scripted. And that's why I think it's such a good way to view it through the lens of The Good Wife, because The Good Wife is intended for, like, real conversations and real action to be moved, and you see that with each of the characters. So I think this has been a wonderful experience analyzing the show. And I want to thank you and our viewers for joining us on this.
One viewer.
Yeah, our lovely one viewer for joining us on this journey.
I have to say, this experience, making this podcast, as well as being in the class, it's something I'm not going to forget for a long time. And
Yeah.
despite, there's certain aspects that, of course, I hate homework, and everyone hates homework. But with this class and with the bear, none of it seemed like busy work. There wasn't an episode of the bear where I was like, well, it's just filler. And there wasn't a class where I thought, man, this could have been an email. This could have been whatever. There's nothing that just
meaning.
Yes, it's intentional, intentionality,
yeah.
and it's something that we don't often see, or at least as commonly as it should be. And it's just something I heavily appreciate.
I think this has been a wonderful experience, and I think we are wrapping up this final episode on a phenomenal note. I want to thank again you and our viewers, and unless you have anything left to say,
nope. This has been and will be the Kitchen Fire Podcast, and we might see you if we do another episode.